Hey guys, we are back in the studio. Well, I am in the studio. Welcome to Rewriting the Narrative. This is Sarah Bishop. I have Meredith recording remotely today.
Yes, I am a very tropical oasis. If you're looking at this is some amazing, fantastic wallpaper of the place that we're staying right now. But I do feel like we're in a tropical oasis, and it is a lot of sunshine, which is needed.
Tropical Oasis was literally what I was thinking in my head, and then you said it. So that is just
Yeah.
the perfect description, and I think just why we're so aligned as well. That
Yeah.
we think of our environments in the same way.
Not sure that I would pick this exact wallpaper for like an inside thing, but it's fine. It's
It's
okay.
a fun time. It's a fun time for if that's like a small, just one wall, a nice little accent wall, I feel like that totally works.
Yeah, and it is. It actually is the perfect accent. And I will say this, it's a cute place that we have, and we're very blessed to be able to do this and work remotely and not miss a beat, which is really cool.
Well, speaking of work, so by the time you guys listen to this episode, you'll have seen the announcements that we are doing a webinar on perimenopause, menopause, guiding clients through that transition and tools as coaches that we can implement to support our clients, throughout, that midlife stage, before, during, and after, and common client concerns, things that come up when women are, approaching, that transition, or, in it or after it, and pissed off and just annoyed that there is so much differing information. There's a lot of sensationalism. And today, you'll read the podcast title, so you probably got a hint at what we're going to be talking about. But belly fat, midlife weight gain, and you see both things on social media, right? You see calories in, calories out. That's all that matters. Nothing happens, as you age. Hormones have nothing to do with it. Just work harder, or you're not tracking your food accurately. And that there is something to that.
Yeah, I think that can be applicable. I think it can be applicable, but it's not. It's definitely not the
It's
full story.
it's not everybody's story, and that is what we're going to talk about today, because yes, calories in, calories out. Hormones do impact that equation, though.
Yeah.
And they impact that equation metabolically, and they also impact that equation in how you feel and how your client feels and how they show up in their life, and their ability, their bandwidth to do certain things, or the challenges that they might face, such as, for example, poor sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be lifestyle related. However, estrogen, progesterone absolutely do play a role with sleep. And what happens when you have a crappy night of sleep? Well, it impacts your hunger hormones. So you might be feeling a little bit snacky. So if you're in a fat loss phase, it might be harder to stick to your diet. The other thing that happens with a couple of poor nights of sleep, well, thyroid hormone downregulates. Does that impact your metabolism? Yeah. Hundreds of calories? No. But those little shifts, both in maybe, again, hormones, as when we say hormones, there's a lot of freaking hormones, you guys. Yeah. So when people say oh, hormones don't matter. Well, which hormones are we talking about here? Because there's a lot of hormones. So yeah, it is a nuanced conversation, and it is very frustrating when you're a female and you're like, I'm doing everything right, but I have this pooch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you hear that a lot.
Yeah, I think that you hit on so many amazing points. I think one thing I want to pause on is something that you kind of alluded to, and I honestly think that women, and I don't want to exclude men, same, but we're talking about women here, a subtle form of ageism, and we get this very, I'm going to say at all times in our life, when I'm going to say in your teens and 20s, it can be very dismissive of, oh, you're young, and oh, this is, it's like that type of thing. But and then when you're going through perimenopause and, or subsequently menopause, then it becomes again, oh, well, you're just aging. It's like that gets thrown around quite often. And as Sarah said, there are some very real things that do happen with age as you are aging when you are young, and things are, growing, evolving, and maturing. And then on the flip side, when they are, declining, that is true. But I think that to dismiss or simplify something to this is just because of that, I think it's very dismissive. And I think it is that kind of subtle tone of ageism. Even the whole statement of, women's BMR doesn't go down when you age. That doesn't happen until you're in your 60s. Yeah, right. Scientifically, we get that, but if we really want to get into the nuance of it, like, let's kind of think about what affects that BMR. And well, some of that, part of that is muscle mass. Well, how many people in general, let's just say people, not just women, are going into this midlife time period that they have good quality muscle? Like, most people in this world are very under muscled humans, and knowing that muscle does decrease as we age, and a lot of people would probably stop me there, but oh, well, it's like, it's only like 2%, but like, I don't give a shit like if it's like 1%. The fact that your muscle does decline as you do age, and if you are going into this time period with already a decreased muscle mass, like, these things are going to affect, again, body composition as far as fat distribution. But what Sarah also said, all these other hormones that are happening, right? So it's going to affect your insulin sensitivity. It's going to affect your cortisol, how you're sleeping. Like, and this is where we have to make those connections with everything. And not everybody will have to focus on every single connection, but pulling back the curtain and seeing the bigger picture and seeing somebody's life for what it actually is really important. And that, to me, is how, one, you truly move people forward in a meaningful way to help them, or you just kind of slam the door and say, oh, is this just one thing? So yeah, kind of a lot to unpack there.
It is a lot. And I think understanding that there is a hormonal component, one, can be empowering. It's like, okay, like, there is something going on here. Like, I'm not crazy. That comes up a lot. Like, women just feel like so alone, like at any age or stage with any goal. And I think just understanding that, no, like, these physiological shifts, are happening. Like, for example, estrogen levels decline, as we age. And with that, it can make us store more body fat in our midsection, in our lower belly. So that is a thing. And I think knowing that too, when we do go to approach this, problem, this concern of weight gain, belly fat, like, okay, like, maybe we have some expectations around this cut or this fat loss phase, that we're gonna, like, dig at this, but we're gonna also understand that, like, at a certain point, and this is for anybody, no matter where we're at in a fat loss phase, we're all gonna have areas of our body where we just store more body fat. And that's why, like, females, like, contest prep, like, I don't have to tell you, it's like that glute ham tie-in, especially for our, bikini wellness competitors. And it's like that last bit to dig at. And the conversation often comes up of, like, is this worth pushing for? Do we sacrifice, muscle mass, potentially in other areas, or just your overall health even more by digging at this last little bit? And that's a very extreme example, but kind of the same thing, I think, does often come up. And just having, like, those realistic expectations, like, maybe we had 3 kids, and, like, there is some looser skin that we're also talking about. So, as far as, like, this conversation goes, like, midlife, belly fat, I think, like, because if you're listening to this, you probably have some aesthetic goals, which, like, hell yeah, girl, like, we do too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having those. So I think that's important to go into the conversation with that, in mind. And then also like keeping what I was taught in grad school as the golden rules of fat loss in mind, as we go along here, and then understanding like what shifts could be impacting your ability to maybe carry out those golden rules and where you're at physically, mentally, habit wise going into this fat loss phase. As far as like what tools you have, like do you have like a training program in place? I feel like that's all an important part of the assessment process. But if I may, Mare, can I share those 3 golden rules of fat loss?
Please, I was actually going to say, let's share those 3 golden rules.
Yeah, so the 3 golden rules of fat loss, as taught and preached by Dr. Bill Campbell when I was in grad school in the Performance and Physique Enhancement Laboratory, were: 1, don't lose weight too fast. So we want to aim for losing roughly 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. 2, we want to keep protein intake high. And 3, we want to continue weight training.
Oh my God, yes.
Those are the 3 golden rules of fat loss, I should say, because whenever we're going into a fat loss phase, it's not just about weight loss, right? And honestly, like this is a whole other conversation that we'll eventually have, but with different GLPs out there right now, and people on semaglutide and different compounds and whatnot, which absolutely can have a place. They're tools that are important. This risk of muscle mass loss is just, I'm seeing it more and more. People just under muscled from the get-go and going into a fat loss phase, and that loss of muscle mass does impact your metabolism. It does impact your results. So whenever we go into a cut, we want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible, and we want to approach this cut in the right way. And those 3 ingredients are so key to preserve muscle mass in a cut and make sure that we are losing fat and not just weight.
Yeah, I mean, that is huge. And I think that it's funny, the number 2 and number 3, I think those arguably, if we started making like some healthy golden rules for just like longevity, I think like 2 and 3 would be like right there. They'd have to be in the top 5 if we made a longevity list. I think that when it comes down to perimenopause, one, piggybacking off of what Sarah said, making sure we have these golden rules in place. I mean, I cannot hammer home enough the strength training piece, just going back to what I said earlier about being under muscled to begin with. So going into this time of life and not weight training. And I understand that I'm a squirrel here. I understand that there's a big movement about weighted vests right now. I'm just going to say this. Yes, like something is better than nothing, but walking around with a weighted vest, that is not going to be enough when we're talking about bone health and preserving, let alone growing muscle mass, especially as we age. I'm just going to say that right now. Walking, I love it. Please move. Movement is medicine. We've done so many posts on walking. We need to be moving. But again, that is not going to be enough to preserve muscle mass, let alone, bone health, etc. So not to scroll any further, but making sure we have these foundations in place is huge. Like it is the paramount things. And I think discussing with women during this time, going back to like what you were saying earlier, Sarah, what's happening in their lives and how we can do things in a sustainable way so that a fat loss phase does not, or a fat loss goal does not become another loss strategy, another yo-yo.
Right.
I think that I want to touch on the couple hormonal pieces now just to make sure we've done it. And then I really want to tap into those lifestyle pieces. Like Sarah said, with that drop in estrogen, and when we see that drop in estrogen, she mentioned that we will gain belly fat. Now, or it's possible it will increase the chances of, etc. I want to just preface in saying that belly fat that we are more inclined to put on is not just like aesthetic. that's actually visceral fat. So
Thank you.
it's
Yeah.
not just subcutaneous fat, it's visceral, to which goes back again, like rewind to everything she said. That visceral fat, that's metabolically active, and that is inflammatory. It also can release these cytokines, which are, we're just going to say, like inflammatory invader guys. They're just nasty things. Those right there in themselves also will cause inflammation elsewhere. With that decline in estrogen, we will also see like other hormones, like she mentioned. We'll see testosterone. So this is also where that, I'm not going to say imbalance, but please understand that this is not this one single line. We're not looking for this one single ratio. But when we see that estrogen decline, we can see for a lot of women that, number one, we make a ton of testosterone. But we can start to see, again, that ratio and more androgenic for some women, to which also that shape changes, as Sarah was saying, where we become more of a little bit of an apple, or for some people, a larger apple. And those hormonal changes will affect insulin, will affect cortisol, will affect sleep. And this is where it ends up being like this round and round thing. So when a woman wakes up and it's like she's training, maybe she is training hard, she's lifting weights, she's been lifting weights, this is, I want to say this, Sarah, like I have seen women that they are not training 7 days a week. They are not going psychopath manic on cardio. I see women that are arguably doing all the right things. Like I look at them and I can't say, hey, I need you to eat single ingredient foods. I need you to drink, 3 liters of water. I need you to move this much. Let's train 4 days a week and make sure we're recovering. They are literally ticking every box. Sleep hygiene's in check, but we are actually seeing their bodies change. We're starting to see their blood sugars change. We're starting to see their triglycerides change. And seeing this body change, we know what's happening. And this is where it's like, hey, like we need to dig in a little bit deeper here. This is where looking at the lab work and then offering, like you mentioned, ensuring like, are we talking about hormone therapy? Are we talking about, any other supportive adjuncts that may be beneficial to their overall health? I don't want us to paint the picture that, all these women are coming in, again, not doing all the things, but it's important that we understand that there is a big demographic of women, and we need to ensure that we have some stable foundations, and maybe these stable foundations are happening while we're supporting them with hormone therapy, right? We're not holding hormone therapy like a stick or a carrot in front of a woman. That's not fair, and that shouldn't happen either. But we're also not telling them, hey, take this, estrogen and your fat's gonna melt off. They're not fat burners, right? And I think that needs to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like, for us, like, if you are just starting off, like, starting with trying to, aim for at least 2 weight training sessions a week is super solid. Working on increasing your protein intake. So around 1 gram per pound of body weight, give or take, can be a really solid target. Or, aiming for at least 30 grams of protein or a good palm and a half size of portion at every single meal. That, making sure you're eating, 3-4 servings at least of fruits and veggies a day. I'm going to say that's bare minimum. Emphasis on those veggies, the colorful, dark leafy greens. Those would be some great foundations to start with that might even help you lose weight in of itself. I don't want to dive too into like how to, set up a fat loss phase, because like you said, like there are like a lot of different demographics here, people that we are speaking with. I would say if you are in that camp where you're like, yeah, I train 4 days a week, like I lift, I progressive overload, I'm doing cardio twice a week, like, or, I've been attempting to diet, my protein's in a great spot, but like things aren't budging. And, so do you need to start doing anything like different, like special, as far as like, because, now you're in perimenopause, like maybe I need to diet in a different way? What would you say to someone, like that? For me, I think you brought up a great point with blood work. Like if it's been more than, 6 months since we've had recent labs, let's get a check under the hood. Let's see what's going on. because that can absolutely, guide decision making. And then as far as like, do you need to diet in a different way now that you are in perimenopause? Maybe. And it's not because of perimenopause, and it's not because you need the perimenopause program that Sally Sue influencer is selling for $99.99. No, like, it's because that we maybe are, having different stress levels, and we are seeing changes to sleep, and we are seeing changes to insulin sensitivity. And maybe you got away with doing things in one way for a while, and in previous cuts, but now we got to be a little bit more strategic. We got to be a little bit more dialed. We got to maybe implement things like refeeds. Maybe we do need to, hey, like, have some real talk about the types of carbs that you're choosing. Like, maybe you're used to like macro dieting, where it's like IAFYM, and if it fits your macros, and I'll just have like a bowl of Chipotle, and it'll fit here. And or like, again, like, we're looking at your food diary, and I'm like, like, I love the balance here, but we got to maybe get a little bit more real about what balance looks like for you at this stage. And that 80-20, maybe that 20 does matter a little bit more, and we maybe need to go 90-10.
You know what I wanted to say?
And I'm such a bad guy for saying that.
No, I was going to say this. Everything that she just said, for a lot of women who may be, just hypothetically, may be just now starting to focus on this stuff now because they're seeing their body changes now. So now there's urgency. I want to just pause and say everything that Sarah just said, we also feel is applicable to somebody who's in their 20s and 30s, maybe doing, and say somebody who is, I'm going to say this, she's 25 years old and she did, a bodybuilding show when she was 20. And she hasn't competed since then, but she's like expecting that to diet in the same way that she did for that previous show, to do the same macros, or to get on the same meal plan. And if she follows everything just the same as she did 5 years ago, it's going to work the same. But I need you to know that we see it all the time. We see it all the time, regardless of what spectrum you are in, that the diet that worked before isn't necessarily the diet that's going to work now. We also understand that, yes, in perimenopause, we have those hormonal shifts, which absolutely is going to change the game for things, to which why Sarah said, hey, before we become reactive, let's take a hot second, get our feet on the ground, let's get some lab work, let's see where you are at, to which I think arguably we have a really great conversation. One, we get the lab work back, and do we, number one, perhaps work on some hormonal support, to which we don't change anything with your diet. We don't add in more. We don't pull in less or consume less. We just keep things stable. Make a pretty big variable with regards to hormone therapy. See how you sleep. Are you recovering more? Do you have more energy in the gym, more energy in your day? So now you're feeling better, you're moving better, things are easier, to which we actually might see some changes just based off of that. That said, to her point, you might have been one of those people where you're coming to us and you've already been under eating, right? You've already been under eating for years, to which maybe in order to get the body composition that you want, because it's not about the scale, it's about the composition. Because as Sarah and I both say, if you had the same body, but it weighed 10 pounds less, but nothing changed, your pants still fit the same, you looked the same, would you really be happy just because the scale said you were 10 pounds less? And most women are like, hell no, I want my body to be different. To which we may actually not be feeding you less. We may be feeding you more, and feeding you more consistently, to which we might be seeing not a lot of scale changes, but we might be seeing some body composition changes over time. So there's so many different really cool things that we can see that happens. But I think a lot of women, we compare ourselves to what other people are doing as well as what we could get away with doing before. And I think that now coming into this phase when we feel like arguably our body is betraying us because we feel like so much is outside of our control. We can't control that our hormones are declining. Well, that fucking sucks because that's going to bring on all these other things. And shit, my sleep is now sucking and I get a belly to boot. I do not want to play this game of Jenga anymore. I want off at the next stop. That's what most women are thinking. And we want to make, I guess, we want everything now. We want our body to change now. And oftentimes what Sarah and I find is we, again, need to build some consistency, see what you have been doing, do things maybe differently, but not what you're thinking. Maybe it's not actually giving you less food. Maybe the diet you need, which is just nutrition, is giving you more food, maybe more of different food as well. Moving differently, strength training. That's another thing that we see is a lot of women will come in, especially, I'm going to say like late 40s and beyond, and their definition perhaps of training is very different than perhaps, what Sarah, my definition is with regards to progressive overload. We love that you might enjoy the circuit classes. In fact, I encourage that. I have some clients now that they want to do a circuit class once a week, but they also know they need to do some progressive overload stuff. And they understand that the difference there. And I'm like, you know what? Go in, have your fun, but let's start tracking some things. Let's start ensuring we're actually getting strong here.
Yeah. And like I said, twice a week, get in, get out, 40 minutes, solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Absolutely.
And don't judge your wins, especially like if you are like maybe you have, cut previously and, was easy peasy and, or, again, like you do have a solid background, but right now, like you're, 45 and you have these career demands, you have, 2 kids that are older and you're shuttling them all over, life looks different. Mm-hmm. So of course you're different, of course, and your physiology is different. Like, I hope you're not the same as you were when you were 25, right? Like, I hope we're different and I hope our strategies are evolving with you. And looking at it from that perspective, I think can be really empowering. And so when I say don't judge your wins, I think a lot of women are like, oh, I'll just wait to start until I can do it all, or I can do it this way, or I have this trip coming up, or, my husband has this surgery. Like, I'll just wait. No, because now you're waiting. Why are we waiting to have results? Yeah. When there are things that we could do now. No, maybe it's not the 40 minutes that I said, maybe it's only one day of 40 minutes. That's still better than nothing, right? So exactly. I think just not judging your wins, not comparing, putting on the blinders, unfollowing on social media, because you, my friend, you are the person that they know has the cha-ching to buy their $99.99 program or whatever, and this laundry list of supplements. Like, they are targeting you, and do not fall into that you are a special snowflake unicorn. Like, yes, you are, because, like, girl, you are special. But, like, we don't need shiny, fancy necessarily, right?
You don't need the pink dumbbells. You don't need the pink dumbbells because you're a woman.
No, because I saw you carry that Publix order in with one hand, and I know you're a lot stronger than a 3 or a 5 pound dumbbell. Like,
exactly. I think it's so funny. I think we have said, like, over and over just on this podcast, like, things do change, and we have seen just in our own lives so much change. But I think that our biggest message is you can't just bottle all women under one umbrella and say, because you turned up 45 and on your 45th birthday at midnight, now all of a sudden you must eat this diet because that's the only way you will succeed. You must weight train this way because that's the only way you will succeed. Like, that doesn't account for you as a human, what you're going through now, what you've been through, what you've been doing. And yeah, you know what? Depending on all those factors, you may need something different, but it's not just because this happened to you.
Right. And I'm even thinking like right now, like my clients who are like 45, like in perimenopause, like the ones that are like super successful, like in their fat loss phases, they have that foundation.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they're willing to learn and they're willing to make changes. So they're not telling me like, oh, well, yeah, it's hard though. Well, yeah, girly, I know it's hard.
It's
Like
always been hard.
I know it's hard. Like it's supposed to be hard. And like I said, the ones that, are like super successful, like do have like that foundation of training. Like they do understand how to auto-regulate. They have been tracking their food. They understand like how to put together balanced meals. And they communicate. They tell me when they have things that come up, or they're telling me about like their sleep so that I can make adjustments accordingly. We can implement refeeds when they need them in their fat loss phase. And we do very much have that approach when we do go to cut, of get in, get out, get the t-shirt. I'm very big on that, especially for this population. Because dilly-dallying, because like, oh, well, they had, alcohol and I couldn't say no, or, whatever. Like, no, we want to like get in and out of this 12-week cut, because when we're dilly-dallying and we're dilly-dallying because of a lack of adherence, that just further compounds like these hormonal shifts that are happening, and it further impacts your results. So that's why like having that big foundation and making sure you're properly supported, beforehand, like we did the health phase before, is so important.
Yeah, I think that there's really so many ways that you can go into, fat loss. And I think that it truly depends on that female, and where she really is at, and again, how much fat we have to lose. There's so many different demographics here to chat about. And I know for myself, for especially somebody who's had a long dieting history, it kind of depends on my approach. For some women who I feel like they've spent a lot of time in their life dieting, I try to ensure that I'm building, I guess, their nutrition around their weeks so that they are having a little bit more freedom, for some people, to where they're having a little bit more on track meals. Like I'm encouraging that, like, because they've spent so much time being a little bit more regimented. But then on the flip side, I have, another demographic where I might say, hey, listen, like, we need to be like really tight here. I want us, to be a little bit more strict with regards to time in and time out. But I think like the overarching theme here is that we don't want to be in fat loss forever. That can't happen. And if you're already coming to us or any of the coaches that we mentor, and you've been essentially in a fat loss, be prepared to be challenged. That in order to get your goals, the ones you truly are after, which arguably we definitely want to make sure that, I think that a lot of people think that if they get to this certain weight, they will find happiness, and that's at any age. And that's a conversation I do have often with my clients too, is that I want you to have fun. I don't want this, we are not getting on stage for a bodybuilding show. And, if you are, that's a different conversation. But I want our intervention to give back to your life. Yes. I don't want you to feel even more restricted than arguably the last 15 years of your life, where you're chronically dieting or chronically telling yourself that this is bad, this is good, and I'm so bad. Like, I want different for you. I want you to be excited. I want you to, like Sarah said, like, go on holiday and be like, you know what, like, I'm not going to track my food because I'm going to make choices that align with the person who I want to be. And you know what? If I fuck up and I do or I drink more than I wanted to, well, then I learned my lesson. I learned that next time I need to do it differently. I want that for our clients. I want them to have fun. I want them to focus on being strong, taking up space instead of just constantly trying to become small. I'm not saying that we need to be metabolically unhealthy. I'm not saying we need to be, in a body that we hate. I'm not saying that at all. But I truly find that clients that see the most success are the ones that aren't focusing on being smaller. They're focusing on having fun, being stronger. Like, then it's like shit just happens and it's cool.
Yeah. I don't want anyone to approach it from a place of desperation. And I think when we go in with like a little bit of those foundations in place, we end up not approaching it from that place of desperation, and we never want anybody to be in any phase and be white knuckling it the whole time. Yeah. Because one, it's not good for your results, and two, it's not good for your mental health and your enjoyment, like you said. Like, absolutely. So if you're listening to this, be open-minded. If you're a coach, just know that these shifts are happening, and we're not gaslighting anyone. We're not saying that hormone therapy is going to poof make it all better. We are saying that that is a tool, and we are saying that context matters, and calories matter, calorie choices matter, hormones do matter. It all freaking matters.
All matters.
And you matter.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to.
You are a unicorn.
I had to. No, guys, but like for real, like it is like so frustrating, like, and like I do feel for clients, and that's why I'm so big, and Meredith's so big on assessing somebody as a whole and their whole situation and diving deeper. And again, like, we're not promising that by doing the labs and doing, you know, this certain protocol that this is going to be the last fat loss phase that you ever have, and that's going to get rid of the midlife, you know, belly fat. No, we're not promising that. However, like Mare said, like, there is a way to do this so that it's sustainable and it doesn't take over your life, and we feel good in the process.
Amen.
Okay, you guys, so with that, we're rewriting the narrative on how you approach that midlife belly fat. So let us know what you think. If you have any questions, check out that webinar that I will have linked somewhere. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Bye, guys.